In Oxford High Street, near Carfax, Slatter and Mundy's bookshop has a large bow-fronted window for displaying its latest wares. A student floods it with anonymous pamphlets, which he's had to get printed in Worthing, since every Oxford printer has refused to touch it. It's called The Necessity of Atheism. It's 1810, and college battlements guard those living off the state's superstition. Oxford swarms with clergy and mitred bishops with crooks, herding the university's sheepish flock. Congregations at dirge-like church services, singing sadistic psalms, begging God to smite their enemies, to kill off their livestock, and to do away with Egypt's firstborn. Such social engineering pleases empire builders, whose hymns, such as "The rich man in his castle, the poor man at his gate, God made them high and lowly, and ordered their estate," suit a church whose ecclesiastic establishment assigns private pews to privileged grandees, while it remains supine on a rigid class division and smugly celebrates the status quo. Oxford's funded by its large estates, and by a printing press, which has a monopoly on the printing of Bibles. We get your land and your diamonds and your gold, while you get to be good with our holy books. The imperious "Slaves, obey your masters" from the New Testament's Colossians 3:22 is but one handy text from the Bible's rulebook, crammed with its dubious Bronze Age ethics. And in Oxford's hands, the Bible becomes a colonial talisman, with its presses printing 1 million copies a year, whereby countries that had previously enjoyed self-rule now find they're at George III's mercy. Kings, according to the empire's self-deception, are kings thanks to a British god, though to Shelley, the student, the monarchy is only the string which ties the robber's bundle. Meanwhile, the celibate dons of this profitable religion guzzle venison from Magdalen Deer Park. They gnaw at ripe game birds shot on college estates and wash it down with hogsheads of claret. A theological mafia, with every whim indulged by their college's underpaid servants, which is hired to cook up the date of creation or to invent the location of Eden. Then, after debating such thorny questions as to how many angels can dance on a pin, it can choose to discuss whether it was Eve or a snake which caused man's original downfall. This misogynist topic was picked over for centuries in this languorous, all-male institution, though transubstantiation was once to replace it, when a college mouse was seen chewing on holy wafers. It was debated whether a mouse could absorb the great message through its having nibbled on a spiritualized biscuit. And then, mightn't it resurrect, even though the aberrant mouse had been exterminated? Although Oxford's dons' minds may have been more usefully stretched by addressing the 19-year-old Shelley's pamphlet, they would shy away, fearing it had upset their gravy train, and instead they demanded his career be ended. A fellow of New College, the Reverend Jocelyn Walker, orders Monday's bookshop to burn every copy, though he'll be keeping one back to show the authorities as evidence of blasphemous libel. It happens that Monday's bookshop had caused a previous sensation with something else thought to be Shelley's, when an unstable needlewoman called Margaret Nicholson, crossed in love, had taken a dessert knife to King George III. She'd lunged at him twice as he left the royal carriage, and was then arrested and sent to an asylum. Mischievously, Shelley had pretended that Miss Nicholson was his aunt, and greatly given to poetic composition. Shelley seized on the opportunity to attack the king in verse, and to berate him for his tyranny. He published his tirade under the name of Margaret Nicholson, as he knew he could do so with impunity. Shelley then persuaded Munday to peddle the verses, sensational verses, that Shelley claimed to have been found on the person of the failed assassin, Margaret Nicholson, and written to justify her deed. For Shelley had been angered by his knowing of the manner whereby George was ushered into his reign. Some birthday poems had been specially written by a warmongering courtier called Whitehead, to be sung before the king at St. James's, all of which had an imperialist theme. To arms, ye sons of might, and hail with sounds of war the new-born year. Britannia, from her rocky height, points to the Gallic coast and lifts her spear. Whitehead was exploiting England's hatred of France to promote war against its revolutionary forces. Through Whitehead's inciting king and country bloodlust, England was being persuaded to fight on any pretext. The immortal hatred which by turns wakes and sleeps with fury burns. New cause of just offence has Albion found, and lo, it bleeds afresh the eternal wound. Understandably, Shelley, an ardent pacifist, thought this demanded a poetic response, and so he used the needlewoman's purported poems to lay into George III's hate speech. Monarchs of earth, thine is the baleful deed, thine are the crimes for which thy subjects bleed. Ah, when will come the sacred fated time, when man, unsullied by his leader's crime, despising wealth, ambition, pomp, and pride, will stretch him fearless by his foemen's side? Ah, when will come the time when o'er the plain no more shall death and desolation reign? When will the sun smile on the bloodless field, and the stern warrior's arm the sickle wield? Not whilst some king, in cold ambition's dreams, plans for the field of death his plodding schemes. As Oxford had been the royalist base in the Civil War, it traditionally still fawned upon royalty. It benefited from royal visits, from royal charters and royal grants. Yet here was Shelley saying kings should be got rid of. But April's sunshine is a monarch's smile. Kings are but dust. The last eventful day will level all, and make them lose their sway, will dash the sceptre from the monarch's hand, and from the warrior's grasp rest the ensanguined band. Paranoia about French revolutionary forces had been turning England into a police state. You could be transported for life to Van Diemen's Land just for possessing Tom Paine's Rights of Man. Yet Shelley continues in this seditious vein, fired up by overseas war reports of Britain's empire and its military massacres, all given a royal seal of approval. Whilst ruined towns and smoking cities tell that thy work, monarch, is the work of hell. It is thy work, I hear a voice repeat, shakes the broad basis of thy blood-stained seat. And at the orphan's sigh, the widow's moan, totters the fabric of thy guilt-stained throne. It is thy work, O monarch. Now the sound, fainter and fainter, yet is borne around. Yet to enthusiast ears the murmurs tell that heaven, indignant at the work of hell, will soon the hated cause remove, which tears from earth peace, innocence, and love.